All right, good morning, everyone. It is Wednesday. I'm saying that to ground myself. Let's see, for those of you who just joined us or may not know who I am Eva Shepard-Nickel, and I'm the Executive Director of CleanStart. CleanStart exists to help you start, grow, and thrive. Today, as most of you know, we're here for a full slate of workshops, so we're glad that you're here, and hopefully you can stay for most of it. If you can't, that's okay too. By the end of the day, we're going to also be hosting an informal entrepreneurial hang we call Grow Tech Hang. So first round of drinks and appetizers are on us. And so we hope you can join us. Oh, Matt's like, party, woo! Right. Matt's like, party on, Garth. Okay, so I want to introduce our first workshop of the morning. So I'm going to read off of this because I get easily distracted, okay? So our first session of the day is CEO Crash Course, presented by Thomas Hall, who's the Executive Director of CleanStart. CleanStart is one of our really strong partners, and we've been working together for years now, all right? CleanStart is a nonprofit empowering entrepreneurs with the knowledge, capital, and connections to create and grow their clean tech companies. Thomas's bio, I mean, it's long, but I'll read a few pieces of it. He is the leading voice in clean technology innovation, known for his work in supporting startups and quantifying the clean energy transition. As Executive Director of CleanStart, he has helped launch and scale dozens of companies tackling challenges in energy, water, and ag tech, and more. I can honestly say, and more. There's so many different categories now of that. Thomas also brings analytical expertise from his work at CleanEdge, where he contributes to clean energy stock indexes and technology benchmarking tools. And these tools are used by investors and policymakers. So he has a passion for grassroots innovation and data-driven insight. And anybody who's ever been in my classes knows that I say data, research. So anyway, that helps. That didn't help anybody but me. I'm just saying that for those who used to be my students. All right. So Thomas is also a graduate at CSU Chico. Yay, Wildcats, right? We have Wildcats in the room? Woo! All right. Okay. And with a BS in financial management and a BA in economics. He was also part of Chico State's first Center of Entrepreneurship. So when they first had the center, right, when it first started, a long time ago. Okay, so from here on out, let's just give a big hand to Thomas Hall, please.
Thank you, Eva. We'll have to update that because, a point of clarification, I'm not with CleanEdge right now. So I've done a lot of work with them, but I'm currently not with them. But yeah, so I'm Thomas Hall, Executive Director of CleanStart. And we're really trying to build entrepreneurs in the Central Valley. We focus on clean tech, but the number one thing that a lot of the entrepreneurs need is not a technical knowledge, but how do they turn this technical knowledge into a sustainable business? So with that, we built the CEO Crash Course, which is there to take, in 12 weeks, move them from nothing to hopefully something, hopefully a scalable company. Now, if you're curious learning more about the CEO Crash Course, you can scan that there and you can apply, but it's a 12-week program. So I've tried to take our 12-week, 24-class program and cram it into a handful of slides. I think it's going to go well. But our goal is to get these technology entrepreneurs ready for capital and for them to be able to build and utilize capital effectively. Now, for those who know this, what is time? Time is money. Money is capital. So building for capital is also an efficient use of your time. There's a lot of stuff that you can go and learn by doing, which is very, very important. But we're hoping that we can help you grow and learn by providing you a lot of kind of case studies or examples of people who have done it in the past. In the CEO Crash Course, we do bring in a lot of experts, a lot of people with sales, marketing, scaling knowledge, financial knowledge, to really help give you a solid base in building a company. So with that, on the time is money portion of it, how many of you are technical founders? Just out of curiosity. You had the idea, you're doing the programming, you're in the lab with beakers, that sort of thing. Well, maybe sippy cups, I don't know,
Literally or figuratively?
figuratively.
Probably we all are.
And how many of you can talk forever about your technology? Well, one thing I want to tell all of you about that is stop. A lot of this is I want to go back to always keeping it simple. If you're talking to investors, someone who's going to be your partner, your employees, or how you're building your company, start with a very simple base. If you're picking software, don't go and pick a CRM system. Don't go and pick this complicated system that you're going to pay a lot of money for when you're starting your company, because you don't know exactly what you need. You don't know your processes yet because you're starting your company. So don't go and pick one. Build it all by hand. Spreadsheets, slides, documents. When you're communicating, clear and to the point and write it down. The more that you just keep it simple and explain it like you're 5, like I'm 5, the better it's going to go. And this is going to really help you whether you're talking to a VC or to a bank. You have a banker or a VC, they hear a lot of stuff. And they're really concerned about, are they going to get their money back if they give you a loan or if they give you capital? So if you start talking on and on about the details of a technology, you're probably going to, they might be excited, but you're not going to move the conversation forward. And you might run across a rude VC that goes and says next. I've seen that happen where they snap their fingers and say next when someone starts going on. So through all of this, I'm going to talk about stuff in detail, but remember, keep it simple. All right? All right. So you have an idea, or you think you have an idea. You've solved the problem. You want to start a business. How many of you are looking at B2C businesses? B2B businesses? Okay. How many of you have gone out there and tested your business idea? How have you tested your business idea? You started it? You just went and see what happens? That, you know what? That's probably the best thing you can go and do. Just try. How did you test your business?
Well, basically, I'm utilizing it myself, but I'm going directly to businesses.
Go there and put it in front of them?
Ask families on the street.
Yeah. Just walk down the street, talk to people on it. So if you have an idea, what I'm getting at here is you need to test it. And you've probably seen a lot of people talk about testing their business ideas. And you should listen to all of them because there's a lot of good information out there. But the things that you're really trying to figure out initially is, one, get out of the building, get out of your mind, figure out, do people really want it? How many people want it? How much are they willing to pay for it? Are they desperate for it, or is this kind of just something nice to have? Can you do it? Can you do it well? One thing that I think people often forget about is there's always an incumbent. There's always something that they did before. Whether that's ignore it, or whether that's do a long workaround, there's always something that they did before, and can you actually beat it in their mind? And then the other one, can you make money doing this? Those are kind of the 3 trifectas. Do people want it? Can you do it? Can you make money doing it? And then when you're going through these, really think about, how am I going to scale this? Look for obstacles. When you're talking to someone, see what they're excited about and maybe see what they're not excited about. All right, so at CleanStart, we like to focus, though, when you're building a company, on the 3 T's. Any idea what the 3 T's are? I've said them to a lot of people already today. 3 T's. No, but nice, that is a T. Technical technology, that's one of them. There's 2 more. Traction. Talking.
Testing.
Team. Traction's kind of under team. So, I have a question. How many of you have sales? Or some sort of traction? That's good. How many of you have a team above 5 people? All right. How many of you have technology with patents? Or technology with defendable IP? Not as important, but the first 2 that we like are the traction and team. Anyone wonder why traction and team are the most important when we're talking to people? Scalability.
Well, it shows that it'll sell, that people want it.
That it'll sell. And why is the team one really important, more important than technology? can you do it? Do you have the people around that you can scale with? Do you have someone who can help you, think larger picture? Can you get outside of your head and have a good team that can find your errors and you can find theirs and kind of grow from there? But the first one is traction. Traction is sales. How many of you have been to more than one sales seminar on how to sell? More than 5 sales seminars. I've been to a lot of sales seminars because I did finance and economics, and I'm like, okay, how do you sell? And they all seem to be honestly the same way. They're like, I've got one easy trick for you. You know what the one easy trick is? Talk to 10,000 people. And then they'll bring up and they're like, I talked to 10,000 people and it built my business. And you know what I'll tell you? If you talk to 10,000 people about your business, you will probably grow your business. But capital is also time, and that's a lot of time, right? I asked someone what their shortcut was on this, and I kid you not, the sales guy said, well, I pay my kids $0.25 for each email they send, and then 50 cents when they get a response, and then $1 if they set up a meeting. So their response was, I got to 10,000 with child labor. Now,
Which we don't recommend.
we don't recommend.
Open claw now.
What?
Open claw, we have that now.
We there. Yeah, we have a lot of tools, but you have to go out there and get traction. So what are some ways? 10,000 people, that's a wide net. How many of those people are actually probably going to be your customers? Not a lot of them. So you got to figure out, who your customers are and kind of what they want. And to do that, you got to have something to show them. And you got to find out some way to figure out who they are beforehand. Any thoughts on how you can do that?
Market analysis.
Market analysis. What are some tools out there?
Just searching them on Facebook or
Searching them on Facebook, LinkedIn.
seeing what's interesting.
Those are great ones. Go look a company up on LinkedIn, on Facebook, see what they're doing. Put it in there, see what AI comes back with. And I want to tell you, AI is incredibly important in this. When you're doing research on your customers and the market of what they're doing, AI is your friend. And there are countless tools up there. There's Pioneer AI, which can do pipelines for you. Claude can literally build a website for you that you can then send to people. There's Slack channels that have AI bots out there. There's ZenRank. Check that one out. I hear it's really useful.
For those of you who weren't here this morning for the 9 o'clock, there was a presentation on ZenRank. We'll talk later. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of tools out there for you to go and kind of spy on your customers. And if you're trying to reach them without even talking to them, you can run a social media campaign, I think on Reddit, targeting exactly the groups that you want, and send them to your website that you made with Claude and collect their emails to see what is their actual response. Do they like this before you even go out there and say, hey, can I get a meeting with you? So build something to do kind of research and figure out, who is out there, who's the market, what do they want. Try to reach them through social media campaigns. It's really cheap and easy, and you can find out pretty quickly if something's not working. Now, are all customers that you reach the same?
No.
What types of customers out there? I know a lot of you have probably been to a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. There's different types of customers or buyers out there, right? Cautious.
Go-getters.
There's we have a pyramid here of them. There's the end user, someone who might be using your technology, but they might honestly have no say in what they use. Now you want to make them happy and successful, so you want to talk with them, but at the end of the day, you want to find someone who has a budget, right? You want to find someone who's a decision maker. And this is really important because how many of you have done a startup where you're like, all right, I'm going to do a pilot project or a demo where I'm going to trial something? you can end up doing a lot of kind of trials and demos with not really getting up the ranks. But you need to kind of understand this, because when you make a sale, when does your relationship with that customer end? When they give you the money and you give them the product? No. It keeps going. You need to know them personally and really well, because if they grow successfully with what you sold them, who gets to grow with them? If they end up hating it, not so good, right? So you need to plan to build a long-term relationship with your customers. Now, I was on the first entrepreneurship cohort here at Chico State, and Ryan Johnson, who was the first kind of director of the Entrepreneurship Center, he said, your relationships in business need to be like a marriage, right? You need to have something where there's an understanding of what everyone's kind of doing, what's going on, and how you're kind of growing and going forward. If you don't communicate in a marriage, or you expect, I say something and okay, it's done, we don't have to worry about it, you're not going to be able to grow, right? So when you're learning about your customers, you have to know who the end users are. You have to know the people who think they have a stake in it and are going to be doing a lot of talking about it, the people who actually are influencers and can recommend things, and then the people with the budgets and the ultimate decision makers. So you end up going and having a lot of conversations with people, right? How many of you have gone, though, to a sales meeting and you sit down and you have this spectacular conversation? You're like, this is going great. No one's had a good conversation with a customer? I find that hard to believe. You guys are in trouble.
It was to start with at a sales meeting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it might seem like a good conversation, right? And then at the end of it, you're like, all right, what's the next steps? And they're like, send me a proposal. And you're like, why? We just talked about building all this stuff. Why are we kind of back at step one? Or they're like, I don't know, a demo? And it's like, we just talked about it. We just demoed stuff. That seems like a circular thing. Well, this is what you have to watch out for. And I'm going to give you some keys to get out of it. And that is vampire conversations. Conversations that are really interesting and exciting, but they don't lead to the next step, right? So when you're going into a conversation with people, it's okay to set expectations and ask questions. It's okay to, figure out, is this the right person that I'm talking to? Maybe it's an end user and, you want to get feedback from them, but you don't want to spend 2 hours of your time, because time's capital, talking with them. There's no shortage of interesting conversations. Just remember that. You can have tons of interesting conversations. You need conversations that get you to a sale or something. So some questions you can ask. How long has this been a problem? So if someone says, oh, this has been a problem for a decade, what do you think their interest is in buying a solution right now? He shook his head. Yeah, they're not interested. They've been ignoring this for 10 years. They're probably going to ignore it for another 10. How urgent is it? Are they on a timeline? You'll find a lot of the people that they'll say, I don't know, or I'm not really sure. If there's no urgency, you can keep in touch with them and kind of touch base with them, but don't spend more time trying to sell to them. What have they done so far? This is a big one, because if they're not actively trying to fix this problem, it's not an urgent one for them. And the big one that I think almost you should always kind of start with is, how have decisions been made in the past? So when they've bought other things, how are things bought? Do they have a procurement process? Is it a committee? Is it over drinks? Or the big one is, whose budget does it go on? If there's no budget for it, what's the point? If they don't have a number that they want to spend in their head, whether that's $100 for ZenRank, or whether that's $10,000 for something else, there's not a good conversation to have here, because they're not someone who's ready or interested in buying. So let's say you have the conversation. You've made sales. You're getting traction. What was the second T?
Team.
team. Your team. Your all-star team. Now, you're going to make an all-star team. What's the first thing you do? Do you draft or do you trade?
You employ your family.
Employ your family? Do you draft them? Do you trade for an all-star?
Assess what you need.
I'm sorry, what was?
Assess what you
Assess what you need. That's a very good place to start. That's an excellent place to start. But before we get into that excellent transition to my next slide, there's also, if you go out there and you're like, I'm going to go hire an all-star programmer. I'm going to tell you what has happened to companies I know that have hired all-star programmers. They go and the all-star programmer comes and says, yeah, I can do all that. And you're going to pay me all-star prices and give me half your company. That's also part of it. You know, they want half your company and they want all-star prices. And then you're working with them and you're developing your project, and you'll start finding that unless like they think your company is going to scale, they might not want to give you much more time. So they might not start completing things. One company I'm thinking of in particular, they had an all-star programmer, and when they didn't see an end in sight, they wanted more and more money up front, just constantly asking for more money. And then they started directing the team in a different direction than the company wanted to go, because they're the all-star programmer, they've done it before, you don't know what you're talking about because they're the all-star. Now, good question?
Yeah, you kind of just hit me, like, we're so lucky in Chico that we have Chico State and all these
Oh, yeah.
interns and people and resources we can pull from. So being kind of a startup company, like, that's what I think of, like, hey, what am I good at? And then I'm like, well, what don't I want to do? And what do I want to find other people to help me with? And then I'm like, oh, you got Chico State, and if you don't got that a lot of that money. So that's what I kind of think of, like, what are these resources that I can kind of pull forward to pull that team, but it's also they're building it with you, and you're kind of giving answers, and then ultimately leading to hiring those other ones. But yeah.
Great transition to the next slide. I appreciate it. I very much appreciate it. Because, I mean, when you try to bring on outside all-stars, you run the risk of them trying to dictate where things go. You run the risk of spending a lot of money and really going nowhere. And if you're an early stage company that you're trying to pivot, you run the risk of, like, if you have a salesperson, they're not going to complete sales transactions with you pivoting constantly. You know, you start getting disconnected from your end user, from your customer, and you've paid a lot of money to open a lot of doors that don't result in completed transactions. So the first thing that you end up doing is taking stock of what you have. Now, as an entrepreneur or CEO, you need to have an understanding of all of this. You know, you have to know what's going on in finance, operations, sales and marketing, product. You have to understand that. Now, you're going to have a team to support you if you're going to want to scale that, but you're going to have to take a stock of what you have and what you're lacking and have an honest conversation with yourself about it, because you're going to have to also communicate this to the world. Because if you're going to go out there and talk to a VC and you line up your team and it's all sales and marketing, they're going to have some questions on how you're going to scale. And you can go up there and you can say, hey, you know, we're looking to fill in these holes in operations, these holes in maybe programming. We have an outside CFO that's coming in that we're hoping to bring in when we scale. You're going to have to answer those questions. And it's not just for VCs that you have to answer those questions for. If some of you go after grant funding or go for grant competitions, in the clean tech world, there's ones through like CalSeed, CalNext, and several like at Clean Tech Open, Lacey, where you go and compete. There's people who evaluate you, and it's okay if you don't have a complete team. People understand you're an early stage company, but you have to know what you don't have. You know, it's great if you have everybody, but if you don't know what you don't have, that's not a great sign. Now, there's one critical role up here that I didn't put. Can anyone guess what it is? Team mascot. You gotta inspire people, right?
Is that Toast?
That is my dog Toast. That's her being a white shepherd. All right, so the head of your team, you know all this stuff, you're a great team mascot as well because you're a cheerleader for your company. You're incredibly valuable, but there's one thing that you have to know. The more valuable you are to your company, the less valuable your company is. Because because time is money, money is capital, you have limited time. If they look at you and it's like, you're the centerpiece of everything, it all has to go through you. They're like, well, you can't do all this, you just don't have enough time.
Yeah, I just wanted to, something that came up with the last slide is that, you know, so I did like a .com startup and I've seen this before, where if you have the idea, it doesn't necessarily mean, if you're the founder, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the CEO. And that, you know, if you're trying to build a company and let's say hit it big or, you know, bring something into the world, if you're not the CEO, you could still be the founder and larger shareholder. And it takes a lot of guts to be able to say, hey, I'm going to let someone else do this because I'm not that person.
You know, a lot of companies, they don't really scale until they fire their first founder. One of the case studies we use is of Keurig. And Keurig spent millions of dollars designing and refining their Keurig machine. And with their first founder, it was never ready. And it was never going to be prime time because they kept having to refine it. So eventually they had to fire him and bring someone else in. And that's when they made strategic decisions that allowed them to scale. But if you're a founder who consciously thinks like, okay, how do I work myself out of a job? Which I feel like you do a lot, you know, where you're like, I'm the only one at my company because someone else is going to take this maybe bigger, that's an okay thing. One thing that I like to say to entrepreneurs is you're like a college athlete. You're going to go professional in something other than what you trained in. You're going to go out there and someone's going to say, I really like what you're doing, but I want you to do it for my company. Now, of course, at CleanStart, I want you to go raise millions of dollars of capital and become the next, Tesla. But the reality is you're building capital for yourself and those around you so that you can have a comfortable life. And sometimes that means taking a job at, a large company. We had one entrepreneur who got, $1 million contract for engineering, rolled that into a $2 million contract, was starting to build his team. And then the company that had given him both contracts were like, actually, we just want you to come work for us. We're actually killing the line that you've been working on as a contractor, but we need you in our company to work on something else. And that worked out. That worked out very well for him. But sometimes, you got to pivot, whether it's your product or, your choice in professional kind of careers on that. So you're building this foundation in sales because you're trying to get capital and generate a return on it, a return on your time, a return on investor money, a return on debt, equity that you might bring in. And a lot of that comes to your ability to have a functional team, a foundation, something where you can take a Chico State intern or someone fresh out of college and put them in a system where they can thrive. And to do that, there's kind of three levels of it. There's your foundation, there's your ability to communicate, and then kind of your desired outputs, your kind of mission to rally behind. I'm going to spend most of the time on the first two of these, and feel free to raise your hand and ask questions about them as we go through it. But the foundation is the most important because that's your understanding of how things operate. You have your value creation. You have your body of knowledge, your operations, and then your assignments of accountability. If people don't know how your value is created, they don't know how you operate, and they don't know who's responsible for things, they're going to get off track and you're not going to be able to deliver on the products that you want. So the first one, value creation. Anyone recognize this? This was actually in my managerial capstone class. It's from South Park. There's these little gnomes. They collect underwear, and they said it's part of their business, and they're like, what's the plan? So when you're figuring out your value creation, the engines that generate your company, you need to build a detailed map. Now, this is clearly not detailed enough, but you need a map. What I suggest you do is get the people that are on your team, all of them, sit down and start drawing it out on a whiteboard. How do you get a customer? Okay, when you get a customer, what's the next step? Do you email them, meeting with them? Do they sign up through a platform? Is this in person? Go from start to finish, all the way through of all the points of working with a customer. Now, some of it might be, you might have the sale in the middle of it, but then you have all the support operations going towards the end. And you need to do this with your entire team because everyone needs to know how you're generating value and how you're generating opportunity and profit for your company. And this includes everything from billing to procurement. So start mapping it all out. Now this map is probably going to change as you potentially pivot, and that's okay. In fact, all of this needs to change as you pivot and learn more. Now once you have this map, you want to make a repository of all the actions, how they work, and what you need to do. At the same class that had this, the professor also had worked at GM, and he had worked in their managerial division where he had what was known as the body of knowledge. And it was a giant set of books that anytime someone needed to figure out how to do something, it was written down already in the books. So if there's a process of how a customer comes in and what you do with that information, write it down. You have it sketched out, write it down so that everyone can access it. If you have, like, for example, when you run a payroll, everyone understands how payroll roll works or reimbursements work because they want to get paid. You need to make sure that you have something written out for everything you do. And if you discover something you don't, as my professor said, that's the most exciting time because then you get to add to the wall of books. This will enable you to scale, and it'll help people understand what they need to do when you go and have accountability. So you went, you graphed everything out. You wrote down all the tasks that you have to do and the order of things that you have to do them in. Now you have to say who's responsible for each of these tasks. And when do they, when do they need to get done? You need to have people's names next to it. I mean, it seems kind of silly because you're like, of course we need to do that, but you need to have this because when you go and look at the past of it, you're going to have to make evaluations on whether you're making goals or not. And that's part of the second layer, clear, constant, consistent communication. I tried to put as many C's in there as possible. But scorecard and metrics and meeting and vision. Scorecard and metrics. Remember, keep it simple. Manually make these metrics. You'll see a lot of programs out there that when it comes to sales or, well, since I've been giving things to ZenRank, I'll give them some flack. Whatever the 75 on ZenRank meant for the website, don't use that as your metric because you don't really know what that means. It's good for maybe evaluating some stuff, but for a metric for evaluating your team, not a great one. It needs to be a metric that you manually created and you keep updated and that people understand. Because if someone doesn't understand, what they're doing or how they make their metrics, which I have seen some complicated metrics in my lifetime. I developed medical practices for years, and the metrics to evaluate doctors, those are really complicated. I wouldn't recommend anyone starting with that. And the next one here, which I think is incredibly underrated, everyone hates meetings, but you have to have them regularly. You can have a 3-year meeting where you're kind of setting your 12-quarter goal, but you need to have reviews of your entire system, your body of knowledge, your value creation. You need to have monthly all-hands meetings where everyone gets together and talks about what they're doing. you need to have weekly meetings with each of the teams, especially if you're the CEO, because you're the one who has to know. You're the one that's accountable for this. You're the one who has to go and talk to the banker, talk to the VC, explain things when they went wrong or when they went right. And then, of course, you have to have the regular kind of meetings of like, all right, let's think through this. Let's make adjustments of this. So have a consistent meeting schedule. The amount of, early stage companies where it's like, all right, I got someone, we worked really, really well, and I decided that we didn't need meetings. And then, months later, you're trying to take the company this way, and they took everything over here because you didn't have those regular meetings. That's a common occurrence. You can have two really talented people, and they'll always seem to go in different directions. So you got to stay on the same page, because if you want to hold that ideal goal of the end of building capital, raising money, scaling your business, becoming rich, or having a lifestyle business that makes your life comfortable, you got to make sure that you're on top of it. Because at the end of the day, the only person who's really accountable is the leader of the company. Because when you're out there and you're talking to capital, this big, C letter word that we want, that everyone wants and everyone's trying to generate, you've got to watch your time. So you got to have a team, and you have to know that all capital needs a return on your time, a return on your investment, a return on debt equity. Everything needs a return. Even if you get a grant, grants demand returns. Ask Grant about the grants and all the reports and things that you have to do, because they want to validate that their money was spent in a correct way. Just like a VC does, just like a bank, when you go and try to get a loan, they want to make sure that there's a solid way for them to get paid back. And the big one, on your time. So I've crammed together a 12-week course into about, 35, 40 minutes or so. And the one thing that I want you to remember is time is money, capital demands a return. So if what you're doing is not simplifying it, refining it, and getting to that sales point and preparing other people to follow in your steps with a good foundation, you're probably wasting time and capital in some way. There's a lot of good conversations out there to have, but there's not always productive ones. And if any of you are curious about learning more about these things, here are some of the resources that I use to inform this discussion. David Bland, who I know has spoken here at CleanStart, Sales Quillalia, Scott Sambucci, great on if you're trying to make effective sales meetings. He has a book and a lot of content around it. Get Scalable by Ryan Dice, and of course, Steve Blank, who's kind of considered the founder of a lot of entrepreneurship. You can try scanning all those at once, but it leads to their respective sites. This one it's his list of entrepreneurial resources that I'm not sure if he still updates, but it's still very useful.
Are we going to have access to your...
Sure. Yeah, I'll absolutely show slides. All right, and I'll leave this up. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
How do we go about keeping that human element in this age of AI? So
What?
you mentioned many, things about, because we can do prompts and all of these things and assistants that can anything and everything, but how do we really
Take time with the prompts and take time going over the feedback that it gives you and kind of adjusting it in there. So if you have it and you're like, write me an email and these sort of things, and it gives you an email and you send it out, and you don't really take time to really adjust it maybe for how you really feel about it, you're going to start to lose that kind of human element on it. It is tempting to go and say like, okay, with AI, I can kind of brute force this. It can be, my version of the kids sending thousands of emails. And since AI, I don't know about the rest of you, but since AI has become more prolific, the amount of these really like short, somewhat personal emails I get from people that I have no idea who they are has just skyrocketed. So beyond that, I'd say physically get out of the building, get them, find more warm leads, people that are interested in what you're doing, like through the marketing campaigns. Go to networking events, travel to other cities for networking events, talk to more people. Go and do 1 million cups in as many cities as you can, because then people will start to recognize you. One thing that I think was like really important about what he said on Zendesk that we like to talk about at CleanStart is making yourself a subject matter expert. Posting on LinkedIn, connecting with people through that, going and talking about things in your field, because you need to kind of build this, I'm a person that you recognize, and you can use AI to do that, but if you're not getting out there and doing it, and you don't know what you're putting out because you're relying too much on AI, you'll be figured out pretty quickly. They'll recognize an email that from someone that they don't know that's, a couple things about like, hey, I thought your thing, I thought it was interesting. I want to like talk to you. It's like, no, you don't, because I'll be mean.
How do you get, okay, so you get the meeting with the business or your customer or whoever, and they just don't either know what's their business, like you were saying, what is their urgency? How much money are they spending on it? Maybe they don't know that portion of their business, but you can't make it past that person to get to the person that knows that part. How do you get there? I mean, just giving them a card has gotten us nowhere. So.
Well, one thing is like you can always send them updates about what you're working on and saying about how you've developed on that. The big thing that I would caution on is like, don't, like if it's an entry kind of stage person, like there's a lot of them that love taking these meetings because you buy them food and you talk about interesting stuff, but they've never passed a thing on in their entire life. And those are good people to know and kind of be friends with, but you can't count on them to move you along, and you probably should not spend time doing things, spend your time in a meeting with them or, buying lunch or things with them if they're not thinking of your next steps. In fact, you can ask them, what are the next steps for us to get a sale? And if they're like, oh, let's have another meeting, you'll be like, let's rain check on that. Or, what do I need to get to the next part? That's not another meeting.
So it's not okay to say, okay, but do you buy? No.
Like, I mean, yeah. Well, if you,
Don't help their competitor.
yeah.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Go and say like, hey, I can't have a meeting with you. I have to have a meeting with your competitor. I'm buying them lunch and not you. Because that's definitely a frustrating thing. And kind of on that, in the clean tech space where we deal with a lot more, hardware and things like that, there's a lot of companies that they get stuck in what I call the equivalent of this R&D cycle, where they go and they compete for R&D grants that help them develop this project, and it's really cool, and the press is there. There's probably a politician that cuts a ribbon for this, efficiency thing at a school, but then after that, what's their next sale? Another grant. And we're, going and doing these projects with grants, helps you validate things, but the big budgets, the big money getting spent is not in R&D or research grants. That's a good start. You need to figure out, how do I take this research grant, this project that I did, and get it in front of a larger company. An example would be one of the companies we work with. They've gotten a lot of grants on making energy efficient schools. Well, here's the thing. When schools spend money on energy efficiency? When the government gives it to them, which comes and goes in cycles. When companies or REITs, which were big investment groups that manage properties, when they spend money on efficiency? Every single year. They spend billions every single year trying to generate more money from their properties through efficiency. So if you're stuck trying to figure out how to sell to schools and only doing these projects with schools and not getting into REITs or property developers, you're just stuck in this R&D hellhole where you get a lot of claps for how efficient it is, but you haven't proven that you can sell to anyone with a giant budget who's going to make you a giant company. Right. Yeah.
Something that stood out to me was this idea of the body of knowledge. I think I've seen things where it's like companies can have sort of like a body of knowledge that's digital. There's testing and quizzes, and they can, look for SOP, can be found somewhere. I mean, it's this day and age that I feel like we need like micro SaaS chatbots on top of a body of knowledge, so one can have like a natural language conversation with the understanding of the business. But like, are there technologies today, like you're talking about books on a shelf, like
Well, yeah,
books?
that's just an example. See, the thing, my kind of point of that,
Back in the day.
my point of it is that the important thing is that you getting people, your team together to build the body of knowledge. You can use, a chat or, an AI to go and say like, all right, I'm trying to write this out. Maybe I put it in an outline and I want to make it into a kind of a different format. But you need to really understand what is in there, and like marketing or other things, and you have to have yourself in the loop, because at the end of the day, you're the one executing on it. Yeah. There might be a future where AI, can do more of these tasks and things for you, but the job is the thing the person's trying to do. The job is, solving for the pain point. And AI might do a lot of the stuff in the background for you and help you create a lot of things, and it will continuously getting better than that. And I encourage you to see how AI works on it. But if you don't know what your business is doing or your standard operating procedures is, it's going to be hard for the next person to come in. So at CleanStart, on our standard operating procedures, part of it is use AI. It tells people to go say, okay, you have this, make an outline of what you think it is, and then use AI to do research on it. Oh, you're struggling to write a blog or some sort of content, but you know what you want to kind of say in shorthand. Use AI and then go through and look at it. It's something that you have to have AI in there if you want to move forward, because there's just so much that needs to get done when it comes to kind of this that generative AI can do, that if you don't use it, you're going to get left behind. Honestly, that's the case, but you can't substitute AI for your actual knowledge of what's happening. Yeah.
I think are there any technologies that stand out? I mean, what is the name for that? I think there was a name for
Generative AI?
No. What we're talking about, the body of knowledge, and like there's like you can even have your employees have to take monthly quizzes to make sure that they understand SOP. Mm-hmm. There's a name for that, and I'm struggling to
training.
Like L&D, learning and development.
Yeah.
Learning and development.
Like there's something. Okay, I'm just kind of curious. Like,
Well, you can use an AI to help you, of course, with learning and development and quiz people on it.
right.
That's as you get your business going and maybe are growing beyond 5, 10 people where you're like, I really want to make sure that they understand that. Keeping people's knowledge up is really important. And that's also part of what having the regular meetings with different teams are, because it's making sure that your knowledge is up and that their knowledge is up and that teams are sharing knowledge. So that's kind of more of like team development and a function thing in there, which, absolutely, incorporate that. Body of knowledge is something, I just took the phrase from, if you've heard PMBOK, Project Management Professional Body of Knowledge, which is a giant series of books about how to be a PMP. And you can go and get that certification, and it talks about building giant bodies of knowledge for your company for projects. And there's also a process one where instead of doing projects, it focuses on the process. And you had a quick.
I just want to add to that because AI can help people get that tribal knowledge that's lost into their SOPs too. My background's in manufacturing, quality, and the like. But anyway, I noticed from plenty of companies that I worked at, what the people are doing on the floor is completely different than what the SOP is. So you want to make sure that tribal knowledge is written down and exactly what they're actually doing.
And that's a big problem when that happens. And if you're trying to incorporate AI into your business, I recommend talking with any of the AI experts out there, because I have a whole list of issues that I've seen companies face where they try to incorporate all their things into AI. My favorite is they incorporated AI into all their emails and stuff like that. So one of the employees who thought that they were in trouble or had a disagreement with someone asked the AI what the CEO thought of them, and the AI told them. Or other ones where they have an AI that incorporates everything, and it automatically sends summary emails of discussions, and it did that with interviewees, where it interpreted and said, you responded negatively to this interviewee, which is
There has to be,
so you need to think it through and learn from people's past mistakes. Just don't throw it at everything. Keep the human in the loop, but don't shy away from efficiencies with it. I think what you talked about there of updating your website to reflect it, especially if you're trying to show that you're an expert in what you're talking and selling about, is critically important. All right.
I stepped out for a second, but I'm just going to piggyback on the emphasis on SOPs. So standard operating procedures. And the reason why is because so many people be like, oh, but I'm trying to scale. I'm trying to do this. I'm like, great, let's see your SOPs. And they're like, oh, what are those? Right. Yeah, I get that a lot, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm not trying to give you more work. I'm just trying to say, hey, if you really want to scale, you're going to have some tight SOPs, and you have to live by those SOPs.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of our cohorts from about 3 years ago was like, oh, hey, I'm trying to scale. I'm like, yeah. Do you remember the conversation we had like 4 times now about SOP? He's like, yeah. I said, okay, let's see how that works for you. In 3 months, they've already added 3 people, and they've been able to buy back their time.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, I just wanted to, not because that's a part of the CEO crash course, but I just wanted to harp on that for a second.
So if your SOP changes or your company changes and you start selling or you're branching off in a different way, should your SOP change with
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. What she was talking about there, or that's
a constant review of them.
where they go and they write their body of knowledge, their SOP, and their company evolves and they don't ever change it. And then someone leaves and they don't know what happened. And they go back to their SOP and it's using different technology and different verbiage than you use. Another thing that I didn't cover up here that I think is really important, because it's just a detail, is if you're a founder, you have to know the financials. You have to be able to make a profit and loss, a cash flow statement, and a balance sheet, and be able to describe it. The amount of people or founders that are like, I'll just have someone else do that, and then don't understand what it is. There's a founder in Sacramento, Greg Conley, has been incredibly successful, also great on talking. I've seen him pitch, and when someone asks any sort of money question, he brings up his financials that he made with all of his metrics in it and everything that he delivers on it, and he can say confidently, if you give me this money, these are the actions that are going to happen, and it's going to produce this outcome. Mm-hmm. Now, things of course change, and these models break and evolve, but if you can't show someone a financial projection and a P&L, all of a sudden they're thinking like, oh, you're way too early to take a large amount of money from me. You're way too early to even take bank money.
I like to say, and I keep interrupting, I'm sorry, but I like to say that if you don't know your numbers, it's just a hobby.
Yeah.
So then is that something that you should include if you do a pitch? Should you include that? Or
No, because that's a minute detail of it. If you're a pitch, it should really be, and we've had a lot of success with people who have gone through our programs in their pitching when it comes to winning pitch competitions, not necessarily, always raising money, because that's also other issues on it. But if you're doing a pitch, start with the 10 golden slides. If you see people out there that doing these amazing pitches with 40 slides, I guarantee you, they are experts. You are not them. Go and start with 10 slides. Keep it simple. Keep it boring. Keep it basic. Problem, solution, market, how you're getting to market. Keep it to those slides. And then as you get better at it, grow it from there. Then start adding stories. Then start adding, animations. But if you go through and try to do that all at the beginning, it'll turn out bad. And my first time learning that not to let someone do that, he went and did it after we reduced his slides to 10 slides, and then at night he turned it to 25. And then he went up there and he said, this presentation was made with the help of Thomas back there. And then I watched him go through it, and he just added words everywhere, animations, and I'm just like, oh my God, why? Yeah.
Does your company make introductions to venture capitalists?
We do to people that we think are ready for it. We also try to introduce them to other programs that can help scale them up based on their kind of technology of what they're working on. Because I know you're working on, irrigation. So helping the people that work with us, like I mentioned, Blue Tech Valley, the Center for Irrigation Technologies, who's also a partner of CleanStart here, they're the ones that would know more about the capital in the irrigation space. So my kind of role would be is like, okay, let's talk about how you kind of make a real kind of company out of things and, you know, work on those financials, but also you got to start partnering and talking with them. You know, you got to, you know, we were saying, get out of the building, let people know that you're a human, not AI doing this. Go meet with them virtually, go check out, you know, they have their irrigation days and all sorts of stuff in agriculture. Get out the building, talk with them. There's an ag department here. Make sure that they know that you're that interesting guy who's really annoying, you know, that's trying to do something cool. All right, I don't know what the, okay.
What was the resource you mentioned with the set of books for
Oh,
process?
So if you look up, there's process management professional and there's project management professional. I think it's process management, but there's a process version of the PMP.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
One more question.
You
I was curious about CleanStart and a closed loop circular economy, but I don't know if that's necessarily.
so for people who are curious about the circular economy, that's kind of thinking about sustainability as, you know, you have something that continues and doesn't basically go to the landfill. We have a lot of partners in there. We've talked about it a lot. It's kind of a hard space to play in the waste management system, and it's a much longer discussion about it.
It's not necessarily you all aren't producing, you are more the.
We're more like connecting you and educating people. Well, in Sacramento, there's a group, the Atrium, which they focus heavily on the circular economy and upscaling. They have a lot of cool kind of projects there, but circular economy is a tough nut to crack. It's going to be a lot easier in California with legislation that has producer responsibility of waste products, which is where you'll start seeing kind of single-use cups that can't be composted go away, and other things. Otherwise, companies will get fined. The producers will.
It'd be great to see something that in the CEO kind of like that responsibility component.
We on the marketing side, when we're talking to companies about it, we highlight that when you're at the end of the day, your company needs to make money in the private sector. Whether you're energy, whether you're sustainability, you've got to make dollars and cents. Now, for your marketing and making people feel good, that can help get you a premium on it, and that premium doesn't always have to cost you more money. There's a lot of companies that have price competitive products that are just more sustainable than others, and they use that in their marketing so that they can go and charge a little bit more. So it's kind of a trade-off on it. There's no overpriced, successful, sustainable product. You know, people bought Teslas because they were fast and cool. You know, they like the idea of the sustainability, but if they weren't fast and have this giant screen on them, they probably would not have been successful.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. Let's give Thomas a big hand.
Thank you. Coach says thank you too.